Some of the smartest people in the world are also some of the loneliest. Not because they hate people, not because they think they are better than everyone, but because they often see deeper, feel heavier, and think further than the people around them. And that can become painful. By the end of this video, you'll understand why intelligent, deep-thinking people often feel lonely, and more importantly, how God can turn that loneliness into wisdom, purpose, and deeper connection. 1. Smart people often feel lonely because they see what others ignore. One reason smart people feel lonely is because they notice things other people overlook. They notice patterns. They sense motives. They think about consequences. They ask questions others avoid. And sometimes that makes them feel like they are living in a different world. Ecclesiastes 1:18 says, "For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief." That verse is honest. The Bible does not pretend wisdom is always comfortable. The more you understand, the more you see brokenness. The more you discern, the more you recognize foolishness. The more you think deeply, the harder it becomes to enjoy shallow conversations, fake friendships, and meaningless distractions. But listen carefully. Your depth is not a curse. God may have given you a mind that sees deeper, because He wants you to pray deeper, love deeper, and live with greater purpose. Loneliness becomes dangerous only when you start believing the lie that nobody understands you, and therefore nobody ever will. Elijah felt that way. In 1 Kings 19:10, Elijah said, "I am the only one left." But God showed him that he was not alone. There were still others who belonged to God. Sometimes loneliness exaggerates reality. It tells you, "No one sees what I see." But God says, "I see you, and I have people prepared for you." 2. Smart people often feel lonely because they struggle to find deep connection. Many intelligent people do not simply want company, they want connection. They do not just want noise, they want meaning. They do not want to talk only about trends, gossip, money, or appearances. They want to talk about truth, purpose, God, pain, healing, and eternity. That kind of hunger is not wrong. Proverbs 25 says, "The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out." Deep people need relationships where the heart can be drawn out, not mocked, dismissed, or misunderstood. But here is the challenge. Sometimes smart people become so used to being misunderstood that they stop trying to connect. They withdraw, they overthink every conversation, they assume people will not understand. They protect themselves so much that they accidentally isolate themselves. And isolation is not God's design. Genesis 2:18 says, "It is not good for the man to be alone." That was said before sin entered the world. Even in a perfect environment, God said isolation was not good. So the answer is not to become less deep. The answer is to become more discerning about who you allow into your inner life. Jesus loved everyone, but He did not reveal the same level of intimacy to everyone. He preached to crowds. He trained 12 disciples, but He brought Peter, James, and John closer in certain moments. Even Jesus had layers of relationship. So do not feel guilty for needing depth, but also do not use depth as an excuse to reject everyone. Pray for the right people. Be patient with imperfect people. And remember, connection grows when honesty meets humility. 3. Smart people often feel lonely because their calling feels different. Sometimes loneliness is not only about intelligence, sometimes it is about calling. When God places a unique assignment on your life, you may feel different from the people around you. Joseph had dreams his brothers did not understand. David had courage others did not recognize. Jeremiah carried a message people did not want to hear. Mary carried a promise people could not easily explain. Being chosen by God does not always feel exciting at first. Sometimes it feels lonely. But Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." A renewed mind will often feel uncomfortable in a world that celebrates distraction, pride, lust, greed, and self-promotion. So maybe the reason you feel out of place is not because something is wrong with you. Maybe it is because God is teaching you not to conform. But be careful. There is a difference between being set apart and becoming prideful. Set apart says, "Lord, use me." Pride says, "No one is on my level." Set apart leads to service. Pride leads to isolation. Philippians 2:3 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves." The mind God gave you is not for superiority, it is for service. Your intelligence is not meant to make you look down on people. It is meant to help you lift people up. 4. God meets you in the lonely place. The lonely place can become either a prison or an altar. It becomes a prison when you use loneliness to feed bitterness. It becomes an altar when you use loneliness to meet with God. David often cried out to God from lonely places. In Psalm 25:16, he prayed, "Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted." David did not hide his loneliness from God. He brought it to him, and that is what you must do. Do not pretend you are fine when your soul is tired. Do not spiritualize your pain so much that you never heal. Bring your loneliness to God honestly. Say, "Lord, I feel unseen." Say, "Lord, I feel different." Say, "Lord, I need wisdom, but I also need comfort." Hebrews 4:15 reminds us that Jesus understands our weaknesses. Jesus knew loneliness. He was misunderstood by his family, rejected by his hometown, abandoned by his disciples, crucified by the people he came to save. So when you feel lonely, you are not praying to a distant God. You are praying to a Savior who understands. 5. Turn loneliness into purpose. So why do smart people often feel lonely? Because they see deeply, because they crave meaningful connection, because their calling may not look normal, and because wisdom can feel heavy when it is carried alone. But here's the good news. You are not alone. God sees the thoughts you cannot explain. He understands the emotions you cannot put into words, and he can bring the right people into your life at the right time. But your part is this. Do not let loneliness harden your heart. Let it deepen your prayer life. Let it sharpen your purpose. Let it teach you compassion. Let it push you closer to God, not further from people. James 1:5 says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault." Ask God for wisdom. Ask him for humility. Ask him for true relationships. Ask him to show you how to use your mind for his glory. Because the goal is not just to be smart. The goal is to be wise. The goal is to be loving. The goal is to become more like Christ. So today, trust God with your loneliness. He can turn your quiet season into preparation. He can turn your pain into compassion. And he can turn your deep mind into a powerful tool for his kingdom. You may feel different, but with God, different does not mean forgotten. Different may mean called.